The so-called blue wall, how did it collapse? You see, like any election, there's been a lot at play, and over the next few days, there will be a lot of dissection, introspection. What worked, what did not? What were the deep-rooted psychological shifts at play, perhaps? For many Americans, one of the main issues has always been the immigration crisis. Many Americans reportedly felt the Democratic Party did little when it comes to combating illegal immigration. And the numbers seem to back that perception. As per reports, illegal border crossings soared to record levels under US President Joe Biden, averaging 2 million per year from 2021 to 2023. Remember, US Vice President Kamala Harris was tasked by Joe Biden with tackling the immigration issue. Reportedly, Harris visited the US-Mexico border just twice during her tenure. We are talking about the US-Mexico border, the border from which the largest number of illegal immigrants reportedly enters the United States. How many visits? Just 2. As per reports, to many Americans, the Democratic Party's action, rather the lack of it, when it comes to the core issue of immigration, felt like neglect in a way. Maybe they felt like it was an issue that deserved solid attention but did not quite get enough. And that's never a good feeling, right? Many people, like Elon Musk, for example, perhaps added more to that perception. Musk, remember, said that Democrats were letting immigrants in to secure future votes and turning a blind eye to the chaos that this caused at the borders and in communities across America. And then there is the fear factor and almost existential anxiety about identity. Let me explain this. As per reports, many white Americans felt marginalized and saw unchecked immigration as a threat. And Trump, remember, promised to close the border and round up immigrants using US troops. In an interview in February with the Time magazine, Donald Trump said he will fight, quote-unquote, anti-white feeling in the United States without getting into the specifics. Reports also say that Trump portrayed the perception that Democrats were ignoring the concerns of white Americans, devaluing their way of life, and basically leaving them with fewer resources and fewer opportunities. So that could have been a huge factor at play. Did this sentiment really result in the creation of a voting bloc with one clear goal, to reclaim what they felt that they had lost? And let's not forget, according to a New York Times poll last month, 27% voters named the economy as their top concern, more than double of any other issue. Remember, back in the 1990s, Bill Clinton showed America that the economy can trump even the most pressing international issues. He won against George H.W. Bush, who had just led the US through the Gulf War. Because reportedly, voters cared more about jobs, wages, than Iraq and Iran. Clinton's famous campaign phrase, "It's the economy, stupid," quote unquote, it's still reportedly widely remembered, and why not? Not just in America, across the world. As per reports, inflation, in fact, has become a major burden in this election. For the Democrats, reportedly in the past 4 years, prices soared, hitting the working class the hardest. According to a New York Times report, the average price for a dozen large eggs, for example, nearly doubled from 4 years ago, while prices for cereals, bakery products jumped by 25%. Fruits and vegetables, 14% for the same period. You see, when anyone has to pay more for less, they remember, they don't forget. And reports say for many Americans, the perception has been that the Democrats did too little, too late to curb inflation. And reportedly, the Republicans were quick to latch on to this and make the most of this opportunity. So here we are, staring at a Senate dominated by the Republicans and Trump returning to the White House. Did the Democrats just simply fail to connect with the working class on basic issues like immigration, economy, while the Republicans managed to pull that off? Trump, remember, spoke during his speeches about securing the borders, lowering taxes, increasing jobs, saving the American identity, lowering costs of living. That message may just have resonated. Going straight across now to Patsy Vidikaswara, VOA White House Bureau Chief, with us from Washington, D.C. Hi, Patsy. Thanks very much for being here on the broadcast. I really want to know from you, you've been tracking the developments very closely as far as the Harris camp is concerned as well. What's going on there? Do we see Kamala Harris speaking to the public anytime soon? Do we say that she has conceded defeat or not? What's going on?
So her campaign co-chair, Cedric Richmond, came to the stage at just past midnight last night at the Howard University. This is where the campaign was hosting its election night watch party. And basically what we saw then last night was a repetition of what happened in 2016 when John Podesta came on stage at 2 a.m. At the Hillary Clinton headquarters and say to everyone, go home. We're not going to hear about the results tonight. Tomorrow's another day. And there's nothing more that they can wait for that night. That's exactly what Cedric Richmond said. And he did say that Harris will not be addressing her supporters last night, but will speak to the nation here at Howard on Wednesday. That was what he said yesterday, but so far we have not heard any kind of logistical schedule from the campaign. But the expectation is that at some point today, Kamala Harris will speak and address the nation. We don't know whether it's going to be a concession speech or not. The expectation is that it will be, because Harris herself has committed to a peaceful transfer of power and committed to accepting the election results. I mean, I don't need to tell you that the mood last night was of, resignation. There's some complete sense of dejection, perhaps. I spoke to a Harris campaign and some White House aides who were just sort of in disbelief and still trying to let it sink in, and saying that, yeah, maybe we did misread Middle America, which is where all of or most of the supporters coming for Donald Trump is from. As you mentioned, the blue wall has crumbled yet again.
To what extent, according to you, and through your interaction with the people, with the camp officials as well, has the economy, the issue of inflation, really been on the top of the mind of the voters? Like we just outlined, it's been a factor that's been talked about in great detail as perhaps one of the most important issues that's dominated this election outcome.
Oh, absolutely. The campaign knows well that these are the top issues in the voters' mind: the economy, inflation, even though, they're pointing out that inflation right now in the U.S. is 2.4%. That's not much higher than what it was pre-pandemic, and of course much lower than many other countries, including in Europe. But of course, this is not something that voters see when they go to the supermarket and, as you say, purchase a dozen eggs or a gallon of milk. On immigration, they also see how Republicans have capitalized on this issue. And, the argument of saying that, well, we had a plan, we brought it over to Congress, and then Donald Trump killed it, just did not work for voters. On the issue of abortion, this is something that they lean heavily on, hoping that this will motivate turnout among women's and progressives. Apparently, it's not enough to offset the other two issues of concern. And I think overall, the theme is that Harris failed to be the candidate of change that many voters were hoping for. I think this was probably one of the early indicators of the fact that the campaign was in trouble was when Harris was interviewed recently and was asked, what will you do differently compared to Joe Biden? And she said something to the effect of, nothing comes to mind at this point, even though later on she corrected it, saying that she would appoint a Republican. But that moment where she refused to lay out the differences in terms of policies on the economy, on immigration, on Gaza, that's the thing that I think many analysts will point out to as one of the reasons why Harris fared the way she did last night.
And I'm sure we will hear more about the introspection that's been underway within the Harris camp. We're leaving it there for the moment. Patsy Vidikaswara, thanks very much for joining us.
My pleasure.
To stay up to speed with the latest news, download the WION app and subscribe to our YouTube channel.